Good morning, Huntsman School. We're excited to be here with Doug Fiefia, who is a Aggie rock star. I'm so excited to be watching this presentation with him today. So Doug is an Aggie alum, obviously, and served 2 terms as our USU Student Body President. So good job on getting reelected. He graduated with degrees in marketing and business administration and continued to get his MBA in 2020 at Rice University. He began his career at Workday and is now at Google as a customer solutions manager, excuse me. And we're here today to talk about social intelligence in the workplace. So good morning, Doug, and welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Elise. Appreciate the very gracious introduction. If you're okay, I'll go ahead and share my slides. But grateful for the opportunity to be asked to speak by the Huntsman School of Business, and grateful to be here with all of you. Let me share this real quick. Okay, can you see? Sorry. Okay. But before we jump into things, are you okay, at least if I go ahead and just get started?
Go for it.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. Before we jump into things, I did want to give a little bit more context on my career path. Just so you know, when I make comments or share my ideas, you know where they're coming from. As Elise said, I'm an Aggie through and through. My older siblings are all Aggies. I loved my time there, and I met my wife, who is my lifetime partner there, and so it will always hold a special place in our lives, our time being in Logan. As it relates to my career, I've been in sales as long as I can remember. I've sold in big box retail, I've sold knives, I've done door-to-door sales, selling solar, security, and then after graduating from Utah State, I took a job at Workday, doing sales development, and Workday was an amazing company to start my career. Because of some early success, which I'll share a little bit later, I moved into sales management, and I really got to a point where I could see the next step and possibly the next 2 steps, but I didn't want to get to a point where I felt stuck and not be considered for the next job because maybe I didn't have the experience or the education. And so I decided to go back to school. After a lot of research and decision making, I decided to go back to Rice, where I joined their full-time MBA program. During my time at Rice, I was lucky enough to get an MBA internship at Google, which was 2 summers ago. And then just last August, it's been 8 months now, I joined Google full-time, where I manage a Google Ads sales team of 9, and I just loved my experience there. Also, as a part of my MBA program, one of the entrepreneurship courses I was taking my second year, I actually started a construction company business here in Utah during the pandemic, which sounds a bit crazy, but I grew up doing construction with my dad. And then during my MBA program, I kept reading about the housing shortage in Utah and how there's a shortage of construction workers. And I thought, well, I can do that. And we just hit our year mark back in December of last year, and we specialize in finishing basements. Now, the reason why I walk through kind of my career path is because at every point in my career, every move was impacted by social intelligence, whether it was getting people to vote for me during student body elections at Utah State, or it was knocking doors, selling solar, or managing sales teams in tech, or interviewing to get into the MBA program, or interviewing with Google. Time and time again, each success and failure was in large part due to social intelligence or the lack thereof. And with that, let's jump into the topic of social intelligence. What is social intelligence? In its simplest form, it's the ability to build relationships and to navigate social environments successfully. Social intelligence has to do with being able to read people, to understand where they're coming from. It's about knowing what they're thinking and feeling, also known as empathy. It's about acknowledging your surrounding and the people around you and being able to adapt in various social settings. It's about being self-aware and also thinking about what you're going to say before you actually say it. Now, we've all probably been in situations where you share something that's on your mind, or you share maybe a struggle. You may have said, oh man, I'm really, really struggling. Working from home has really been tough for me. And then the person that you're telling replies with, oh, well, things are great for me. I'm not sure why you're having a hard time. Don't be so hard on yourself. We've all kind of been there where we've shared something and someone has just completely ignored your thoughts and your feelings and have just shared something completely opposite. Or maybe you've been in a situation where you're in a social setting and one person won't stop talking. Everyone is visibly hurting because they've stayed in the half circle 10 minutes too long and fighting to get out, but the person is oblivious. Now, when you hear these examples, we all probably are thinking of specific people or specific situations that we've recently been in. And it's pretty clear that these situations, I think we can all agree on that this is not social intelligence. The hard thing, though, is being able to tell if we ourselves are being socially intelligent. Are people thinking of us when they think of these examples? Real life example, 2 nights ago, my wife and I are with a couple of friends, and one person in our group is dominating the conversation. Let's call her Emily because that's her name. Just kidding, it's not her name. Emily was telling a story and just telling story after story, cutting others off when they tried to contribute. And you could see everyone was just getting tired of listening and was trying to start side conversations or leave the group. And then the interesting thing is another person joined about 15 minutes into the conversation and they completely took the conversation over. At this point, it was just funny because it was physically obvious that everyone was trying nicely to get up and leave the conversation. But what was interesting about this experience was after 15 minutes of talking, this person left. And what was interesting is what Emily said after. She said, and told us all, everyone who was in the group, she said, I can't believe that person wouldn't stop talking. True story. So my point here is this: social intelligence is pretty obvious, but it's hard to practice. And here's another example of this. One of my favorite books of all time is by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. The core idea is that you can change other people's behavior simply by changing your own. It teaches you principles to better understand people, to become a more likable person, improve relationships, win others over, and influence behavior through leadership, which is basically social intelligence 101. Now, I've added here on this slide kind of the few key points and takeaways from the book, not to criticize, condemn, or complain, to smile, encourage others to talk about themselves, show respect for others' opinions when you're wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. The interesting thing about this book, again, it's one of my favorites of all time, but it doesn't tell us anything that we don't already know. These things are things we've learned in school, in church, at home, from our youngest ages as kids. If I'm being completely honest, there isn't anything really breakthrough here. But Dale Carnegie uses famous people like presidents, famous business people to teach us fairly obvious principles. And they're things that, again, we've already learned. I can even hear my mom teaching me some of these and remember her teaching me some of these and hear her voice saying certain things like, don't forget to smile, or saying, Douglas, listen, or even saying, will you please stop complaining? Whatever it is, these, again, are fairly simple and obvious lessons that we've learned throughout our life. So my question is this: how is it that Dale Carnegie, his book that was published back in 1936, has been since translated into many, many languages, was number 19 on Times Magazine list of the 100 most influential books, and now has sold over 30 million copies worldwide? Why do we need people like Dale Carnegie to tell us things that we already know? Well, here's the reality. A lot of times we know what we should be doing, but it's incredibly difficult to actually execute. I'm sure we've all been in a situation that we can think of that we knew exactly what we should have been doing, you knew you weren't doing it, and even as you were doing it, you might have even thought about the consequences, but you still did it anyways, right? And so in my opinion, the success around this book and many books around like this book is this idea, is that if you if you know the rules of social behavior, or you can learn it through this book, you can be socially intelligent, and then you can be socially effective. But my message here today is knowing is not enough. And so my challenge to you is to pick one thing. Pick one thing that you hear or learn today and actually execute and act upon it. So now that we've been through the what, let's talk a little bit about the why. Why is social intelligence important? Top three kind of things here that I would like to share. Top three reasons is: one, it can save your life. It can save your marriage or the most important relationships, or it can save your career or help secure your dream job. Now you might be thinking, okay, you're being a little bit dramatic. What do you mean it can save my life? Now, although I think if I was ever held up at gunpoint or being robbed, it would be great to be able to understand this person, what they were thinking, put myself in their shoes, and to be able to talk them down. There's another point that I want to make here. Daniel Goleman, who is the author of Emotional Intelligence and also is the author of Social Intelligence, he's kind of the person who's coined this phrase. He wrote this in his book. He says, the most striking finding on relationships and physical health is that socially integrated people, those who are married, have close family and friends, belong to social and religious groups, and participate widely in these networks, are socially intelligent, recover more quickly from disease and live longer. Roughly 18 studies show a strong connection between social connectivity and mortality. So it can save your life. Saving your marriage. Now, I'm sure we've all been asked by someone who's important to us, how do I look? This question may also have taken the form in, does this shirt make me look fat? Now, you and I both know that there's only one right answer to this question. If you don't know the answer, please come to our Relationships 101 course next week. I'm kidding. We laugh about this, but you would be shocked and surprised at how many of my friends have answered this wrong when their wife asked them this question. Now, one of them asked me, what, do you want me to lie? And I said, no, I want you to save your marriage. And this is social intelligence. Lastly, your career. Whether you're in your career already or you're still in school preparing to start your career, if you can learn social intelligence and act upon it, which is key, it will help you avoid and navigate so many difficult situations that you will undoubtedly have. And so trust me, it will save your career and hopefully help you secure your dream job. And so now that we've talked about the what and the why, let's talk a little bit about the how of social intelligence. And if you have any questions, please stop me. I'm just kind of going through this. I know there's kind of a lot here, but if you do have any questions, feel free to stop me and ask. But the how is this: the key to learning social intelligence is through experience. There really is no shortcut, but the sooner that you start, the better off you will be. It's about observing people, practicing, and then implementing what works and stopping what doesn't. And so I thought about different ways that I could share with you my thoughts, my experience, and I thought the best way to do it was through sharing a few tips and tricks that I've learned throughout my career, and on how to develop social intelligence and how to practice it. Again, warning, this is not, there's not much of a breakthrough here. The way I like to explain it is it's like going to the dentist. You know what they're going to tell you: brush twice a day, floss, use mouthwash. And whether we do it or not, it's up to us, right? And so similar here with social intelligence, there's not going to be anything breakthrough here, but if you can take away one thing that maybe you do more of, or maybe is new and insightful for you that you start doing, that's the key here. So the first tip I have is to be a good listener. Now, when I say listen, I don't only mean with your ears. I also mean with your eyes. And what do I mean by that? People will typically share their thoughts and feelings through their body language and social cues before they actually say anything. Studies show that 70 to 93% of communication is actually nonverbal. And so be observant, listen. Great leaders will ask what people think and what they know about certain topics, will listen and then integrate what they've heard. An example of this, of listening. Yesterday, I got a text from a disgruntled customer. We're working on their basement, and she texted me and told me that our crew put the wrong texture on her walls, and she wasn't happy with it. I was busy, and so instead of asking questions, I just texted back and told her we matched the texture that was on the walls in the rest of your home, and that's why we did it. Well, that didn't go well. She sent me a few long texts explaining how I was wrong and how she was upset and how we needed to come back and fix this. And so I immediately called her. She didn't answer. I sent her a text and said this: look, I apologize for not getting more clarification. Please give me a call when you get time. She called back immediately after that text, and I just asked her, okay, tell me what's wrong. And I just let her talk for 15 minutes. Just let her talk. Stayed silent and just listened. I asked her what she wanted after she was done talking, and she said, look, I'm fine with the texture. I just want one thing changed. And I said, okay, done. We'll change it. But she still didn't seem satisfied. And so I realized that I saved a lot of money by not having to send my crew back to fix the entire basement. And so I said, look, I'll give you a small discount because it saved me money not having to fix the texture. And so what happened after that? She referred her neighbor, and we're now doing her neighbor's basement. By not listening, it would have cost me much more money to fix the issue, and I would have been left with a disgruntled customer. Instead, she felt heard, she felt understood, and gave me raving reviews of our company and how we are so great to work with, and now we have a new customer. And that all came from 15 minutes of listening. And so be a good listener. The next tip is to practice empathy. Now, we all feel good when others understand us and can relate to us. Naturally, I know for me, for sure, our minds tend to jump to criticism, complaining, or condemning. But before we do that, take a step back, think about where the other person is coming from, and give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Put yourself in their shoes and try to view the world from their perspective. This is empathy 101. Again, nothing breakthrough here, but I think this is not only a principle that is helpful socially, but it's also in business. Here's one example. When I was at Workday as a BDR, or what we called it at Workday, a CSD, we were tasked with reaching out to executives of large enterprise Fortune 500 size companies to try to set up meetings with our team. I got on the phone, cold called, and after many failed attempts of cold calling these executives, I thought there's gotta be a better way than trying to cold call these executives with assistants who basically tell us to go pound sand. And I asked myself, okay, if I was an executive, what would make me take a phone call? I thought back to my days at Utah State in student government and how we got students to do things. We fed them. And our saying was, if you feed them, they will come. And students did. And so I took the same concept and I changed it a little bit because I knew I couldn't call. And so we changed the format. The idea was to send them a survey with a few simple questions. It would take 2 minutes to fill out. The questions were, are you looking to change your HR and financial software? If so, how soon? And would you take a meeting with us? And in response to just filling out the survey, you had to do nothing else, no ties connected with this. We would send you a $15 Starbucks gift card because I know everyone loves their coffee. Now, my manager and director thought this was crazy, even hated it to the point where they tried to shut it down. And I said this, look, if it doesn't work, we don't lose anything. If it does work, we just connected with an executive from a large company for $15. So we did it. And within minutes of sending this survey out, we got several responses from CFOs, CIOs, CHROs from large companies, and we uncovered opportunities we had no idea about. It resulted in millions of dollars in sales pipeline and eventually closed deals. Now, this was something that was then scaled to our entire org and is something that is still practiced today 6 years after I first implemented the first survey. And it all happened because I put myself in our customer shoes and gave them what they wanted. coffee. The next tip is this, to share gratitude. One of my mentors at Utah State, his name is Craig White, he works in the admissions office. He told me that he would spend every Sunday writing 5 thank you letters, handwritten thank you letters, and the impact that it had on his relationships and the people that he reached out. If you know former Student Body President Michael Scott Peters, he calls me every birthday, every single year. And I think even when he was on his mission for his church, he had his sister call me and wish me a happy birthday on behalf of him, which is just crazy, right? I still remember that today. And we don't really talk about anything. He says, happy birthday, how are you? How's your family? And we move on. An example that I had personally is when I was trying to get into Rice and into MBA schools, I met with an old friend and mentor who just happened to be on the Council of Overseers at Rice. I didn't ask him for anything, met with him, asked him some questions to learn about the program. And afterwards, I sent him a handwritten thank you card, just like Craig White told me to. And I sent him a $20 gift card to Amazon. Now, he's very successful. Did he need $20 to Amazon? No. But it was the thought that counted, right? He followed up with an email to me, thanking me for the card, letting me know that he got it, and thanking me for the gift card, and said that this was great. You know, they were thinking of something they were going to buy. Again, he didn't need the $20 gift card. Afterwards, he also sent an email to the dean and also the admissions office, and the next week I got accepted. Now, if you ask him, he will tell you that I was well qualified, I had a great resume, and they were lucky to have me. But I know that his email definitely helped, and what pushed him to send that email was that gift card and that letter. Because now every time we talk, guess what he talks about? He talks about the gift card, which is funny. It was 20 bucks. I was a student, you know, not that big of a sacrifice for me, but it meant the world to him. People love to be loved, and so tap into that, right? And it will help your relationships. That leads me to my next point, to be curious. This is similar to listening, but it's different. Many times we go into new relationships looking to get something specific out of the other person. An example, we may be looking to get mentorship, or we may want to work for their company, or maybe we're interested in their industry, and so we want to reach out to them. But if we go into these relationships with just that mindset of, I just need this one thing, we miss out on so much learning to be had, and we limit the potential of this relationship. By being curious, you're learning, right? This increases our knowledge in areas that we may not be familiar with. Number 2, we're learning more about them. People love talking about themselves, and so let them, right? You may find additional ways that they can help you, and also that you can help them, and you can then add value to that relationship. I love the quote that says, talk to people about themselves and they will listen for hours. And it is so true. Which leads me to my next point, be genuine. We live in a world where it feels like people only reach out to you if they want something from you or out of you. And my thing is this, be genuine in your interactions. Reach out when you don't need something so that when you do, it's not out of the blue. The thing that I always say is to make deposits before you ask for a withdrawal, right? If nothing is there and you ask for a withdrawal, it leaves the other person feeling used. I have personal experience with this. Since working at Google, I've had many students reach out from Rice and Utah State, and I am nothing but happy to help students out and to help them, whether that's through mentorship or to try to get into Google. I'm happy to help at any point. And they asked to meet with me not because of anything special about me, but just because I work at Google. And that's fine. I understand that. But in the 30-minute meeting, I feel like there's this expectation of this is how the agenda is going to go, and this is what they're trying to get out of that 30-minute meeting. We do introductions. The students will tell me about their experience. They ask a few questions about Google, and then they ask me to either refer them into Google or introduce them into someone in the department that they want to work in. And look, I've been there. I understand that this is how networking works, and you only have so much time, and so you want to get the most out of the 30 minutes. And even though they don't know you, you want to ask for, you want to close on that deal and ask for a referral and want to ask for maybe an introduction into someone. But here's my advice with working with alumni and networking to get a job. Take one question into that first meeting, one question that you are sincerely curious about, that you need guidance and advice on. Whatever it is, it could be, an example would be, what can I do in my resume to be more attractive to recruiters at your company? And then act upon it, right? Make the change and then follow up. Show that you took their feedback and then either set up another meeting or then make the ask. It at least shows that you are willing to make an effort before asking them to make an effort. Again, be genuine in your interactions. Don't go into interactions just trying to get that one thing out of them. Make sure that it's something that you bring value to, because it is a relationship. It's a give and take. The last kind of tip and trick is probably the most important, which is to get feedback. We are probably not the best gauge of how we are doing personally ourselves, socially, as we stated before. So get feedback from those you trust and that you know will be brutally honest with you. At companies, they do 360-degree feedback, where you get feedback from your manager, from your peers, from your direct reports, and it's all anonymous. And it gives you a real sense of how you're doing. In the real world, we don't have that same luxury. So ask friends and families or family members who can be candid with you and how you do in certain social settings. Ask them what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. Without feedback, it's hard to gauge where we really are. And if we don't know where we really are, we can't change and improve. So I'll just wrap up things with this. How do you know you are being socially intelligent? And I think a lot of times socially intelligent can wear the mask of being an extrovert and talking to everyone and being very social and working the room. But it's not really about that. It's more about building rapport. When people are around you, they feel comfortable. They are paying attention to you. You're paying attention to them. They're listening to you. They feel felt. We all know how that feels. And when we are with those people, we feel a social chemistry there. And that's the hard thing about social intelligence, is there's not a number, right? It's like, oh, you're 90% socially intelligent. Congratulations. No, it's the soft skills, right? So it's more so of the feeling. How do people feel when they're around you? How do you feel when you're around other people? And with that, I would be happy to take any questions if there are any.
Yeah, oh my goodness, there are tons of really great questions that we have here. And I just want to take a moment to say I really love that you talk about the feeling of how, even in those moments during a pandemic, of how do we feel about ourselves when we notice that we're talking, just taking a moment to pause. So as a former student, recently graduated, you get that life is crazy and you're balancing a million things. So how might you keep standards high on days that your social battery is just drained?
Sorry, can you ask that one more time?
Yeah, so how might you keep these standards, so the 6 tips that you provided, on days where your social battery is drained?
Yeah, I think there's a piece in there that is important, is just balance, right? Know where your limits are, know when your battery is running low, and make sure you take breaks, right? I think we have all been in a world where we are in front of cameras and we have to be turned on all the time, and that can be very draining. And so make sure that you take breaks. One thing that I like to do is take walks. One of my colleagues, what they will do to kind of keep the normalcy of their workday is they will walk around the block, and that's their commute to work. And then after work, they will walk around the block, and that's their way to get back home. Mental health and well-being is so critical. And you never want to put yourself in a situation where your battery is drained and people can tell and people notice, and that affects then your outcomes of an interview or an interaction with a mentor or interaction with someone who is an important relationship to you. Take those breaks and make sure that you're doing what's best for you, so that you can make sure that when you meet with these people, that your battery is full, or at least at a capacity where you can perform well.
Yeah, that's great. So Brock asks, how do we help people like Emily understand their own social intelligence without coming off as rude or interrupting?
That's a great question, and that's difficult. If I was probably a better friend to Emily, I probably would have told her. I honestly, in thinking in that situation, if I am the Emily of the group, I would hope that one of my good friends would tell me and just say, "Hey, like, we love your stories, but we'd love to, like, we want to hear from other people too." And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, right? You have to come from a place of love, right? You have to be genuine. You have to have that that balance, that social balance, so that you can make a withdrawal and say, "Hey, like, we love hanging out with you, but like let's let other people share it." And again, this is me personally, I would love to hear that from a friend rather than them not wanting to hang out with me or be around me anymore. And so I would just say, if you had that relationship with that person, there's nothing wrong with pulling them aside and letting them know.
And I think it's all about the time and place for that conversation too. You weren't going to call out that person in the middle of the group. You want to make sure that it's a safe area as well. So we have another question of, that's that one. So what personal systems can you put into routine to remind you to practice social intelligence principles? Little checkpoint.
Yeah, so this is funny. So you can be very deliberate. I am a planner, and so I will put on calendar things to remind me to reach out to people and to be checking in, right? So someone on my team, they're now in Hawaii, and I have a meeting with them when they get back, and I have something on my calendar that says, ask them about Hawaii, right? Because if not, we go straight into business, we overlook their experience, and then they leave the meeting feeling like, well, he knows I was just in Hawaii. Why didn't he ask me about it, right? And so you can be very intentional and deliberate about your interactions, and you should be, right? You should be doing what Craig White said and writing thank you letters. If that's a Sunday, whatever day that works, set an hour and say, I'm going to write 5 thank you letters this day at this hour. Being more intentional helps you. And then the more intentional you are, the more it becomes habit, and that helps you become more socially intelligent.
So we have a lot of students who are in the middle of interviewing for internships, for full-time roles with graduation approaching. How do you suggest communicating emotional intelligence during the hiring process or during an interview?
That's a great question. This is something that I think needs to happen just more so over virtual conference, because it's hard to really connect with someone. I would say there's a fine balance, but I would say don't be afraid to be vulnerable. I know we have a very polished answer, right? That we always know the first question is, tell me a little bit about yourself. And we just have it memorized. We can press play and play it through. The more personal you can be, it allows the interview also to open up, and you make that connection through even a virtual conference. And so I would say don't be afraid to be vulnerable, and that immediately showcases that you have the emotional intelligence and social intelligence to open up, to understand, and knowing when is the right time and place to share. Right? You don't want to tell them your entire life, but maybe pick one thing that you can be personal with. That's outside of just, this is what I did and this is how I did it. I don't see that. I interview people all the time, and I don't see enough of that. And it is very much like, tell me what's on your resume. And I could have gotten the same answer out of reading the resume than if you maybe shared something a little bit more personal and maybe what you learned and how you grew from those experiences. So don't be afraid to be vulnerable.
Yeah, being authentic and being, as you mentioned, genuine, just leaps and bounds during the interview process for sure. Well, we're all caught up with the major questions. So I want to thank you once again for joining us today. And for those watching, this is our final webinar for the Backpack to Briefcase series for spring 2021. But everything is still on the Backpack to Briefcase playlist on the Huntsman YouTube channel. And continue to pay attention because we'll have some great content over the summer and of course going into next fall, gearing up for that Career Expo. So once again, Doug, thank you for joining us and thank you for being such a great representation of USU. Thank you.